Hey there, John Morris here, johnmorrisonline.com. Welcome back to another episode of the John Morris Show. So this episode, I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while. It's sort of funny because I literally just did a video where I'm like, I don't want to use notes and this, that, the other, but I've had this comment that I got from that I got on YouTube on my mind for a while, and I wrote an email that I'm going to send out in the next few days or so, and I really feel like what I wrote in the email is sort of the best version of what I have to say of this. So I want to give that to you in this episode. So that's what I'm going to do. Before I do that, if you guys do want to support the show, there's a couple ways that you can do that. I would greatly appreciate that. You can become a supporting listener of the show over on Patreon. You'll allow me to keep doing this on a regular basis, but you'll also get access to all of my past courses that I've created, all my coding tutorials, all my source code, all the future courses that I create, and so forth. So if you're interested in that, you can learn more at johnmorrisonline.com/Patreon. If you're not in the financial position to do that, I'd just really appreciate if you could share my new free coding tutorial site, johnsfreetoots.com, with anybody that you know who's looking for coding training or Upwork or WordPress, PHP, that sort of thing. I'd really appreciate if you would share that site with them. Again, it's johnsfreetoots.com. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into this comment from Christoffer. So he said, I code every day, about 5 hours a day for over a year, and my coding capacity is really small. And like I said, I thought a lot about this over the weekend because I've been in that position. I know what that feels like. And I really wanted to give him and any of you that are experiencing this or have experienced this and probably will again at some point, some sort of hope and maybe a way forward. And it's been a little tough because my mind keeps sort of coming back to this same thought. And this thought, the best way I can describe it is to say it doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is, for me, when I first started learning to code, I first dove into PHP. This was 2004, 2005. It took me 4 to 5 years to actually learn PHP. And looking back on that now, especially when you put that in the context of how fast everybody learns things today, that's a really long time. And it really was a grind, and it was a ton of frustration. But somewhere deep inside of me, I sort of had this sense of it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It doesn't matter what I have to go through. It doesn't matter how frustrated or disillusioned I get. This is what I want. This is what I want to do with my life. And so while I get the frustration and I get that feeling, and I know there's this sense of like maybe thinking about giving up and so forth, the thing you really have to do is ask yourself if this is really what you want, and be honest with yourself. Because if it's not, no amount of time, no amount of effort is ultimately going to save you. You're always going to struggle with this, and it's always going to be a grind, and it's always going to be difficult, and you're always going to be frustrated because it's not what you really want to be doing. However, if it is what you really want to be doing, if it just feels like it's what you're meant to do with your life, then no amount of grinding, no amount of struggling, no amount of frustration, no amount of disillusionment is going to stop you from continuing down that path. And so that's ultimately what you have to figure out. And in this email, I guess I haven't really read from it as much as I thought I would, but one of the things I talk about is, coding is probably the hardest thing that you'll ever do in your life. If not the hardest, one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. It's going to challenge you and frustrate you in ways that you never could have imagined, especially if you're someone who is really smart, because most other things in your life probably came easy to you. And I very much have fallen into this category where a lot of the things that I try to do came pretty easy. And then I found coding, and it was hard. And I realized I didn't have the work ethic I thought I had. I didn't have the discipline and the persistence that I thought I had. And it was coding that sort of forced me to develop those things. And so it's going to challenge you in new and different ways, and sort of force you to figure those other things out. And so again, it's probably one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. But again, ultimately, if you want it, it doesn't matter. It could take a year. It could take 5 years. It could take 10 years. if this is truly what you want to do with your life, which is why that's the question you have to answer. If it's truly what you want to do with your life, then you're going to do it anyway. But if it's not, then there's no amount of time that's going to save you. You could spend 100 years doing this and you'll never really get it. And I think the sort of the final point that I want to make here is, all of that. I remember when I was learning PHP, I was grinding, I was frustrated, I was disappointed, I was disillusioned. This was going on for a long time, and I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And as humans, we tend to view things in a linear fashion, as things will progress in the same increment sort of every day, and that's not really how things ultimately end up working. And it certainly wasn't the way this turned out for me. I can remember specifically where I was. I was in a hotel room. I was at a conference with one of my clients. I was talking to them and they were asking me they're just sort of curious, asking me about coding and so forth. And for some reason in me explaining it to them, something clicked, something changed, and suddenly my mind sort of felt like it reoriented itself. And everything for me started to fall in. I remember I left that conference. I came back home. I felt different. It had nothing to do with the speakers. It had solely to do with that conversation. I came back home and suddenly, all of these things that I was struggling with, all these things I didn't understand, all these things that were frustrating me, they just started to make sense. It just clicked. I just got it. And from that point forward, once you get it, you've got it and you never lose it. Now today, PHP to me is nothing. It is, even as hard as I struggled with it back then, it's simple and easy to me because my mind made that switch. And so if I can give you a little bit of hope, that's the thing that you have to look forward to, is all of this effort, all of this time, all of this frustration, all of this that your energy that you're putting into this now is leading up to that moment. And eventually that moment will happen. It will click. And when it does, it'll just all of a sudden make sense. And you'll just blow through all of these problems that you were struggling with before. They'll all just you'll blow right through them and it'll be easy. That doesn't mean you won't face problems in the future, but getting that first big aha out of the way is what allows you to then be able to tackle those ones going forward. And it goes a lot quicker because you have that sort of fundamental understanding of what coding and development and all this stuff sort of is. And I don't think it really matters the language. So again, that's sort of what you have to look forward to. And I guess the moral of the story out of all of this is that if you really want it, just keep grinding. Just keep at it. It will happen. And if you truly, truly want this, there's nothing that's going to stop you. So figure that part out. Really be honest and ask yourself if this is what you truly want. And if it's not, go do something else because you're not going to be happy. But if it is, then don't give up. Don't stop. Keep grinding. And that aha moment will happen. Now, if you want an assist, then let me again encourage you to head on over to johnsfreetoots.com and check out my free tutorials over there, because you don't have to figure all this stuff out on your own. You don't have to learn all this stuff on your own. You can take the help where you can get it, and people who've been through it and show you things. That's just going to help it happen quicker. That's why people learn so much faster today than they did back when I started, because there's so much material out there now. So again, I've taken lessons from a bunch of my most popular premium courses. I put them up completely free for you to access, again, over at johnsfreetoots.com. So be sure to check that out and help you sort of speed a little bit faster down that path that you're on. All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you liked the episode, be sure to hit the like button. Also subscribe. If you're on YouTube, make sure and ring the bell so you actually get notified when I post new videos. Also, if you want past links to all the episodes or links to subscribe on the audio version of the podcast on iTunes, TuneIn, and Android, you can find all that at johnmorrisshow.com. And finally, if you'll rate and review the podcast over on iTunes, I will give you Module 1 of my PHP 101 course for free. That helps spread the show. Again, I would really, really appreciate that. It helps other developers, other coders help find the show and helps me grow the audience here. So again, I'd really, really appreciate that. Again, all the instructions for how to do that, how to get the free module, all that you can find at johnmorrisshow.com. Just click on the Start Here link at the top. And last but not least, thank you very much for watching the show. I appreciate all of you watching this and all of your comments. I'd love to hear from you. I appreciate all of that. So again, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.